Welcome everyone to the UTR All Access Series powered by Oracle. Prakash Amritraj here, your host. The numbers have been fantastic over the last few webinars. You guys have been coming in droves, learning a lot of good educational stuff. Today will be no different. We have a fantastic guest coming up for you today. I think it'll be one of the more exciting webinars. You'll definitely get a lot of great information, whatever level you're at. See everyone piling in. We see a few repeat audience members. Arvind, great to see you. Feel free to keep the questions rolling in all throughout the webinar. We'll certainly try to get to all of them at the question and answer portion at the end. Santa Barbara is in the house. Hope you're staying inside. Philip Kim, hi from Los Angeles. Not too far away from me. Very good. Everyone piling in. Fantastic. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Prakash Amritraj. I grew up here in Los Angeles, played juniors here, played college tennis for USC, played on the ATP Tour for about 10 years. I'm now one of the faces for Tennis Channel, so you can catch me on Tennis Channel Live. Tennis Channel still bringing you new programming, even though there's not any live tennis going on at the moment. I'll be on next week, 9 a.m. to noon Pacific time. Been getting some really interesting comments over there. All the different topics we're talking about. Hi, Arnav. Hope all is well in Ohio. Getting ready, just about a minute away from pulling up our fantastic guest. But before we tee him up today, I know while all of you folks are getting settled in, let's take a short look at a video on how UTR powered by Oracle is really changing the game of tennis.
There is a movement building in tennis, a groundswell that is changing the game, redefining who we play, how we play, and bringing fun to the sport in a whole new way. It isn't about who you are, where you come from, or your age or gender. It's about passion and love of the sport, about the will to improve, about community, competition, fun, and friendship. In local communities all around the world, this movement is creating new opportunities that make tennis, well, universal, equal, open, inviting. This is Universal Tennis. Want to join us?
And with that, a very big welcome to the UTR powered by Oracle All Access Series, a free opportunity to connect and learn from some of the biggest names in tennis. Now, just a reminder to all of the coaches out there, stay tuned because UTR is a new virtual events initiative coming very soon for any coach anywhere to be able to create and host your own virtual events. Now, they can be for free or paid with all the proceeds going to the coach. So go to myutr.com and sign up for free, and UTR will get you set up ASAP. Now, we've had some great momentum with all of these webinars and these spectacular guests that we've had, but stay tuned after this one coming up on Thursday on the All Access Series. We'll have Jim Lower and Gordon Euling Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. So stay tuned. We're going to keep rolling out these wonderful guests. Now, speaking of wonderful guests, today we have a really interesting young gentleman, done some pretty spectacular things on the ATP Tour. He's, of course, going to be in all of your minds with the spectacular couple of runs he's had at the Australian Opens, most notably this year, and that spectacular match against Roger Federer. Here's a good look at the man, Tennys Sandgren. You can see he's had some pretty amazing wins. Fabio Fognini, a good run in Newport. UTR continuing to move up all the way through. And you'll notice also his UTR has always been higher than his ranking in those years where he wasn't as high as possibly he should have been due to the amount of match wins and decisiveness of those wins, but a really good indicator of tennis's true level, which obviously he's risen to now, well above 15 in his UTR. But I want to get into all of those events and all of those matches and more. So I guess without further ado, let's bring the man out, Mr. Tennys, perfectly named Sandgren. Tennys, how are you?
Yo, Prakash, how's it going?
Doing good, doing good. How are you coping at this wild, wild time in human history?
Like everybody else, I think trying to stay busy, trying to stay sane. It's difficult to feel like you're doing anything productive, but trying to get little things done day by day.
Well, I know you're a very, very hard worker, something you're known for. Are you managing to keep up with any of that physique work during this time?
Yeah, I've got access to a private gym, which is super helpful. If I wasn't able to lift, I really don't know what I'd be doing right now. I think you can only do so many body weight
Yep.
exercises until it just starts to get super old. So I'm happy that I'm able to, slap some weight on there. And I'm hitting a couple times a week. I'm hitting with the same guy, a volunteer, Tennessee Vol, Andrew Rogers, and we hit a couple times a week. And it's nice to get outside. The weather's nice. The little things are nice. The weather's nice outside. Get out there, get some sun, run around. Just trying to stay busy.
We certainly appreciate all of the little things. Now, tennis, there's a million things that I want to get into with you. Most notably, of course, your spectacular play at this year's Australian Open. But let's just take a minute and let's go all the way back, especially for those who may not be familiar with your upbringing, where you're from. Let's go to the beginning. Where are you from, Tennys?
Gallatin, Tennessee, about 30 minutes northeast of Nashville, and born and raised. I'm still in the same house I grew up in, and got a court in the backyard, actually, which is fantastic. Oh, wow. Put in a lot of work on that thing. Actually getting it resurfaced this week, which is going to be really cool. It's going to make isolation better to have a nice fresh court with the U.S. Open playing surface. But yeah, born and raised in Tennessee, and did the junior tennis thing in the South.
Now, your family, it's always an interesting story how the sport actually comes into someone's life. My father, of course, played, so I was just kind of, I grew up around the sport. Tell us your history, how the sport came to you.
Yeah, both my parents played. My older brother played. My dad played some satellite events back in the 70s. And, he was kind of the driving force, I guess, early on. But my mom was the one who had her hand on the wheel. She was my coach from when I started playing till I went to college. And so I spent hours and hours and hours, countless hours with her and my older brother on the court. And he's 4 years older than me, so he kind of blazed the trail, which helps. He's kind of the guinea pig, so to speak, as far as how to go about, how as a family do you go about raising a tennis player. And so he was the experimental one who got, good things and maybe some tougher things where you just don't know what you're doing. So then my mom had more experience in coaching me as I was coming up.
Was there a point, of course, the sport was, I guess, maybe put onto you a little bit because of your parents, but then was there a point where you developed your own love for the game?
Yeah. Well, it was always something that, they were playing, so I wanted to be with them, so I wanted to play. Right. That was kind of the thought process. It's just like, I want to be around my family, and they're on the tennis court, so I'm there. I think maybe when I was 5 or 6, I remember my mom and I were in Walmart, and we were picking out a pair of shoes. And I had two choices. I had these Spider-Man decaled shoes, but they had the black undersole. Or I had the plain white tennis shoes that was acceptable for, to take onto a tennis court so it doesn't mark up the court. And my mom gave me the choice. She's like, okay, you get the Spider-Man shoes, but you can't wear them on the tennis court. Or you get these, which, aren't nearly as cool, but you can wear them on the court. And it's like, I think that was really the first, once you go down that path, that was like the red pill, blue pill moment. And so I took the red pill and I took the plain white tennis shoes just so I could be on the court. And I think once you make that kind of sacrifice, it's there's no going back from that. But yeah, I mean, I think my mom and I were both kind of a driving force for my tennis early on. But then really once I got to about 14, I'd say I really was passionate about the game and just was obsessed and wanted to play all the time and watched all the matches I could on TV and was interested in technique and, watching slow motion videos. The technology wasn't that great, 14 years ago now at this point, but still just trying to watch videos of how guys went about playing tennis and what rackets they used and just the whole 9 yards. I was just obsessed and I wanted to be as good as I could be.
Did it help to have a brother who played as well? Were you guys able to push each other, or did you kind of surpass him fairly quickly?
No, it helped a ton. Definitely didn't surpass him quickly. I mean, he got up to 2 in the country in the 18 and unders and was an All-American at Tennessee. And made the doubles final of NCAA's twice. So he was always a very good player. I think I maybe got a little bit better than him by maybe around just before I turned 17 to about 17. I think I started playing better singles than him, but he was always better than I was. And it helped to have him to hit, even though we spent a lot of time on the ball machine. I pretty much grew up on the ball machine, and we'd hit some, but it's difficult when your level's different. If he's 12 and I'm 8,
right.
He's 16, I'm 12. Like you're not getting a lot. He's not getting a lot out of hitting with me. And if he's hitting the ball too big, I'm not getting a lot out of hitting with him at the same time. So it was challenging, but we did do some drills together. But really, just to see how he went about doing things, how he handled matches, and how he handled the traveling and the tournaments and things like that. And I was able to kind of take the good things that he did, and then see, kind of where I could do better, how I could do more.
It's really interesting, Tennys. When you talk to a lot of players about their junior career versus their professional career, the juniors, a lot of them were kind of just playing, having fun, choosing between sports, and they kind of went along with it. Yours was a little bit different. You really seemed to be a student of the game from a young age.
Yeah, I started homeschooling at 4th grade. And so early on, tennis, it's not that I didn't do school. I did school, and I was diligent with that, but tennis was kind of my passion from an early age. And I did play some soccer and some basketball when I was young, like under 10. But, I really enjoyed the individualistic aspect of tennis, where it's all on you. It's all on your shoulders. And if you perform well, you have a good day. If you don't perform well, there's no one to look to. And while I enjoyed team sports, but that aspect just isn't there. If your teammates can let you down, and sometimes it just doesn't matter how you perform because the circumstances are kind of taken out of your hands. But tennis just doesn't have that same aspect. It's all on you. And I enjoyed that a lot from an early age. And from there, it was just kind of, okay, the love of hitting the ball, of working out and trying to, put shots in these little sections of the court, just working on cross court angles. I just loved all those pieces, but love hate too, because it's frustrating as all heck.
Sure.
It's a super frustrating game when every day everything feels a little bit different, especially when you're young. The game every day kind of is these new developments and how you go about trying to keep a consistent level. And even as a pro, that's super difficult. But when you're younger, it's just like your body's growing and your limbs are a couple inches longer. All of a sudden you're like, okay, well, my timing's terrible now. Just those things are difficult, but I always loved from an early age playing.
I think that's such a huge thing that audience members, especially children, can take away from this. It's that love, I think, that holds so many people in such good stead. I mean, listening to you talk about the intricacies of the game and how excited you were to learn and work on things, that passion is everything. And not sure enough people focus just on that. Can I ask you though, having spent so much time on the sport, did you feel it took away from so-called being a kid?
Yeah, for sure. I think it did, for sure. Yeah. But what parts? Because I it took away from the normalcy aspect, for sure, what we would consider normal. But I still had friends in the tennis world, and I'd see them, enough. And I had some friends in Nashville that I would practice with that I'm still great friends with today. So some of those bonds are, I think, tighter than they would be when you're in normal school, or you see people every day for years and years. You kind of get over each other, I feel like, and those cliques kind of change. But when you're kind of in that world with somebody else, and it's a select few people, I feel like those bonds maybe are a little tighter. And so, maybe I missed out on some of the social aspects, but there were other parts that were equal to, and then if not better in some ways as well. And so it's kind of like, well, is the normal path the best one? It's like, well, it depends. It depends on the person. It depends on what you're trying to do.
So let's talk about your juniors now. I guess 14 is the period where you started to take things a little bit more seriously, a few more hours on the court daily. What was your trajectory like? Did it take you a while to break out, or were you just, sort of always at the top of the rankings?
No, I definitely wasn't. 12s and 14s, I was, not bad. I was probably in the teens in my section, in the Southern section, and nationally. I don't think I was ever seeded at national tournaments, like the big national tournaments. I don't think I was ever seeded in those events in the 14 and unders. And they always seemed overwhelming to me. You go to those big events and all the players would come together, and all the names that you'd see on like the ranking list, you're like, oh, that's that guy, and that's that guy. 'Cause you wouldn't see them because you'd stay in your section, and then you'd see these players from different sections, and there'd always be different kind of variations of how people would play in different regions. Like SoCal guys always play better on the faster hard courts, and just like little things like that you'd be looking for. But then around 15, 16, I just started to really hit some improvement. Like I would just have some spikes of improvement, and you could say it was just a product of working hard, and it was an eventuality, or I'm not really sure what happened exactly, but all of a sudden I just started playing better tennis. And by the end of my 16 and under career, I think I won clay courts in Kalamazoo back to back. And 2007, when I was 15 turning 16, was kind of my junior breakout year. It was kind of a year where I just took it an extra couple steps up, and had some great tournaments. And I still remember winning 16th Kalamazoo, and that was super special. But I think that year was kind of the first year where it was like, okay, I think I'm actually, all the hard work is actually starting to come through. Yep. And starting to pay off. And the obsessive way that I went about trying to get better at tennis was starting to actually have improvement, other than just doing the stuff. You get in those stretches of time where you're just kind of doing things and you don't know if you're actually getting better, if it's working, right, or what's actually happening. And that can get frustrating, because if you're working hard and you're not seeing fruits of your labor, then you start to doubt whether or not working hard is even the right thing to do. So to start to see the good positive results come through was a big deal. It was a big deal, and showed me that it kind of reinforced the fact that if you do work hard, there will be tangible results at some point. That was kind of the first time where that really sunk in, and I'd say that's definitely been the theme of my tennis career.
So I want to make sure we ingrain that into the audience. So even from a young age, that hard work perspective is really sort of what your whole career and your whole game has been based on. And we're going to touch on a couple other important points in your life where that came about. But so that obviously took you from that age, winning Kalamazoo. That's a big success. Now you took it international, managed to get into the top 10 in the world, but you still made a conscious decision not to go pro at that time. And you actually went to college.
Right. I always wanted to play, especially from that kind of time period where I was, 15, 16, where it started to seem like a real possibility that I could play professional tennis. That was the focus, and that was what I wanted to do. And it's not that I didn't want to go to college per se, but I wanted to play professional tennis. That's the dream. But I didn't have any good results in the futures to really warrant not going to college. I could barely get out of the second round of futures events, and you're making second round of a 10K was, I don't know, $270, I think, and 2 points, 1 point or 2 points. So you're getting to like 800 in the world, which is something. It's not nothing, but it's certainly not, you're not making a living. Right. And, I'd always heard that, your late teens and your 20s, that's where you set yourself up in your life. And so I didn't want to waste that. So it's like, okay, well, what can I do? So I decided to go to University of Tennessee, where my brother was a senior, and I started in the spring. And the goal was to try and win NCAAs with my brother, and then turn pro after that semester. And we were close, lost in the finals of NCAAs, and those darn Trojans got us with Steve Johnson and Damon DeWin. Those guys clipped us, but it was a great year, great season of tennis. And I did the same thing. I played summer futures to see if I had improved and see if I was ready to turn pro. And that was kind of what I was hoping to be able to do, and just wasn't ready. So I decided to go back to school from there again.
What a diligent way of going about it. So the idea was always to go pro, but you wanted to make sure you were at that level. A lot of people prematurely jump into certain things, and you really took your time. What did you gain in college that transformed you from not necessarily getting out of those second rounds of the futures to obviously being a different player once you left Tennessee?
Right. I think developing my strengths and what I'm actually good at tennis, and I really developed a strong base, a good baseline of kind of my identity as a player, because it's one thing to be a good junior, and it's another thing entirely to start to transition that into adult tennis. And everybody's games they're a little different. So some of the younger guys have massive weapons. So it doesn't matter if they're not as physical, they've got a huge serve forehand. so they don't need to be as physical. Whereas I was struggling to win points on my own terms. But what I did gain in college was just an absolute strong physical base that I could pull from and be able to grind guys down and play long matches. And I could handle the heat well. And I wasn't phased by playing 3-setters, or I wasn't phased if I lost the first set, physically anyway. Emotionally is a different ballgame. But, just kind of learning how to construct points around my game. And I don't know how much better I got necessarily at like ball striking while I was in college, but I learned how to I got a greater understanding of how to work hard and how to structure my days and what it would be like to go on tour and be professional. What does that look like? Because when you're a student athlete, you're working 2 full-time jobs essentially, and it's difficult to do both really well. You can, it's difficult. And so to try and manage that and juggle that, and then remove one of the aspects remove the school part, and then you can focus your time solely on just the tennis aspect. It's super helpful, I think. And I was able to, my idea was that I thought I was good enough when I did eventually turn pro, was that I could just get better playing futures. I could actually progress through the level rather than feel like I was just stagnating and running my head into the wall trying to get better at those tournaments, especially without a coach.
Right. We're going to certainly touch on the not having a coach aspect of it, because that you didn't have a coach for about 5 years. Is that about right?
Correct.
Very interesting. Now, just tennis, it's so interesting to hear you speak because you're so analytical. You're able to really put yourself, in the situation as opposed to, just kind of on a macro level. And I think that's where we are able to learn so much from it. Having played so many matches in juniors, having played so many in college, so many at the futures level, challengers, and then the tour level, can you talk a little bit about the differences in each of those levels? I know when we were talking earlier, you had talked about making mistakes and how those are so different from level to level. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. I think one of the biggest differences as you progress through levels is the amount of time guys will, not play their best level, or you mentally check out, or, when adversity strikes, how long does it take them to get over whatever it is that just happened? Right. And as you progress, that time window gets smaller and smaller. So a guy might give you a look for 2 minutes in a 3 out of 5 set match. You might get a 2-minute look here and there. And it's like, can you take advantage of that or can you not? Whereas maybe in college tennis, you might get a whole set. You might get a whole set where a guy's just mentally checked out. He let's say you lose the first set in the tough tiebreaker and he comes out a little bit too happy, and you get on him, you get up a break, and the set's over. And you just run through the set, and then you guys might restart. He might restart again, down 3-1 in the third. And it's like, well, what happened to the last 45 minutes of time? And that's kind of that window of time differs as you progress through the levels. And so you have to be cognizant of what it is you're doing in that regard. So if you're checking out for long stretches of time, you're done. And so I would notice that as I played better players. If I won the first set, but I struggled for 5-10 minutes in the second, the momentum's gone and I never got it back. And I lose like 3 and 2 in the second and third sets, and just scratching my head, what the heck just happened? Well, you mentally, got a little fried, and you let yourself go. And the guy saw that, he noticed that and thought, okay, I got you. I'm down, but I've got you. And so that part of it's huge. Another part is just how you take time during the points. You'll watch a junior college level match, and you'll see guys a lot of the time just moving very laterally on the court, just side to side, and never really taking time, or playing up in the court and the guy hits the ball deep and moving backwards to go take that ball, hitting it, and then moving back into the court. So that was something I was guilty of a lot in college and in the futures and challengers that I played, was just not doing a good job of taking time and giving court and taking court. So you'll see the best players, you like watch Roger. If you watch Roger from the side, you'll see him moving in like this X pattern all the time. He's moving up, he's moving back, he's moving back, he's moving up. And that's happening constantly. And he's not just back in the court moving like this on a line. And so that part of it's huge as well, I think. It's just how well guys take time. It's not necessarily that if you're at a future, you don't hit the ball as hard, or you're not as good of a ball striker. That certainly isn't the case. And I think the last part is just, especially from the futures and challengers that I played, is that you'd see a lot of really, really good players, but they tend to make the same kind of mental mistakes week in, week out. And you tend to drag those with you as you play. You're playing 35, 40 weeks of futures every year. You're grinding. I mean, if you lose a tough second round match, you got to practice for 5 more days and you step back out on the court and you hope you do well enough to make enough money to be able to travel for the next month. I mean, you have a lot of weight on you, a lot of pressure. It gets easy to keep making those same mistakes, those same mental mistakes where whatever that adversity is that really gets under your skin, like you get a bad line call and then you think the world's against you and then you play the victim the rest of the match, things like that, where you'll see guys, even though they're great players, they tend to make those same mistakes. And it's the guys that are able to learn and grow from those things and start to shed those poor mental thought patterns that are able to progress and make it through.
So interesting listening to you speak, because you talk to so many juniors out there. And I know, back at 13, 14, I was certainly guilty of this also. You're so concerned about how am I hitting the ball today?
Right.
And when I asked you the few most important things in jumping levels, and this is just something to note for everyone out there watching, you talked about court positioning, stealing time away. You talked about not letting up mentally. You talked about being able to bounce back mentally. The mental mistakes, not repeating the same ones. All of these things are between the ears.
Yes.
Very little has to do with actually striking the ball.
Conscious decisions. I would say that ball striking is very low on that list, and that's something that I learned late. I mean, I was obsessed when I was talking about being obsessed with the game. I was obsessed with how I ball struck. And I was, 14, 15, 16, 17, even into my early 20s, and it became a point of a lack of confidence because I never felt like I ball struck as well as the best players around me. I always felt like I was maybe on the lower end of that particular aspect of the game. And so it was a point of self-doubt. But you realize pretty quickly that, or not pretty quickly, but once you're cognizant of it, you realize, look, you could ball strike great and lose 2-2 because either you got frustrated at something you shouldn't have, or you didn't serve well, or you didn't make enough returns, or you didn't, locate the guy's weakness quick enough, little things that's like, okay, if you do these things well, it doesn't matter how you ball strike. If I go out and serve fantastic in a match and my defense is impeccable, it doesn't really matter how I ball strike. It's irrelevant. But then throw yourself in a windy day. When was the last time it mattered how you ball struck on a windy day? It doesn't. It doesn't matter at all. Everything is between the ears. And so it's great to work on that. And you need to be able to ball strike at a certain level. Absolutely. But the quicker you shed the idea that ball striking is the most important aspect of the tennis day in, day out, the quicker you can get into the things that actually really matter. And the mental side of it is something you can control. And it's something that is way more important than how you hit the ball on the strings.
Now, when you talk about ball striking, the first guy that comes to mind, maybe the greatest ball striker we've possibly seen, is a man that you got to know very well in Australia, a Swiss guy named Roger Federer. Now, first of all, just an incredible run in Australia. I know I've told you before, but congratulations, just tremendous, especially repeating it. It's one thing doing it once, as you did in 2018, but to come back and do it again, just really tremendous effort. Let's talk about that match with Roger. Now, you've obviously talked about your history, making it to this level, battling through the futures, college, taking a couple cracks at the Pro Tour. Now you're playing arguably the greatest of all time on the biggest arena there is out there. What's the thought process like? What was that experience like? Thankfully,
that wasn't my first taste of playing on that court or playing on some of the biggest courts that our sport has. Or if it was, then I think I don't know if I would have made it out in the court without maybe losing my lunch a few times. But exciting. I was excited. I really went into the match thinking I could win. I really felt good about my chances. I thought I was playing well, and he had a brutally tough match with, I think, Millman the previous round or 2 rounds. I think 2 rounds prior to that, and our games are on the similar side. John and I's, we're both kind of physical and workhorses, and I thought I matched up pretty well, all things considered. And it was funny when the match started. When you see somebody on TV that much, and then you're on the other side of the net from him, and you're the guy that's playing against him, like his sights are now on you. You're kind of like, whoa, wait a second, hold on. This is like, I had this picture in my head, and this is not quite how I imagined it, because it never is. You can do all the visualization you want, and it just never turns out that way. And so, anyway, we're warming up serves, and I'm tight. I'm getting tighter as the warm-up's going on, and I'm struggling to get the serve over the net. really. And so if you haven't really paid attention to a pro warm-up, it's 3 serves. You have 6 balls in the court, and so one guy's serving 3 balls one way, let's say to the due side, you're serving 3 balls to the ad side, and so you're taking turns. So the balls that he serves are the ones that you're now going to go serve. But that requires you to be able to get the serve over the net, which I couldn't do. He's hitting all his serves. He's serving well, and I'm hitting all of my serves in the net. I think I hit 12 or 14 serves in the net. I couldn't get it over. So I'd serve 3 in the net, rapid fire, because I'm getting more and more nervous as this is going on. And I'm running to the net to go hit the balls over because I want him to be able to serve. He's Roger. Like, I don't want him to think that I can't make a serve. And I think at one point he looks over and he's just like, what is this guy doing? Why can't he serve? And that's where it kind of hit home that I was like, okay, I'm a little nervous. I'm struggling to get up. I'm a little tight. I'm 6'2". I'm probably serving at 5'9" right now. This isn't going already the way that I would like to. And I'm pretty sure, was I serving first? I'm pretty sure I was serving first. So I'm thinking, you need to get this together pretty quickly because you're about to serve now. And if you start off losing your serve, you're probably out of here in straight sets. That's just how this goes. So, but yeah, I mean, being on the court with him was fantastic, and it was a treat to be able to just to play the match. And I know I remember in the first set, I think I hit this little, he came into my backhand and I hit a little running one-handed flick cross court by him, and I looked to my box and I think I said, I just fed in this match right now. And that was pretty cool. And obviously you can go into the match points and how the match ended up, but just to play it and to be in that situation in the quarterfinals of a slam again and all those things you mentioned, yeah, it was really special. That's why you put in the work. That's why you do all the things that you do to be ready to play.
Is there something you learn from watching Fed so up close in a match with such high stakes that you were able to take into your game, or perhaps you wish you knew 10, 15 years earlier?
Yeah, honestly, the thing about it is that I don't know how well he played. It seemed like he played, he probably had an average day. I don't know how well his body was feeling. And for his standards, it was probably average. But just how, I think whether he actually believed he was going to win or not in all those different stages of the match, he was confident enough to know that, hey, I'm going to keep going for my shots and I'm going to keep believing in myself, and this thing will either turn around or it won't, but I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to, break my rackets. I'm not going to throw a fit. He might've yelled like once, but if I think about all the times in my career that I've been down, a set or I'm not going to say 2-1 because that would require me to be playing in slams early in my career, which I wasn't. But, just down a match, down a set and a break, and how are you handling yourself? And he's not really freaking out at all. He's calm, and he's done it a million times, and that helps. But just the idea that, look, even if you're down, the odds are against you, but your best chance is if you stay calm and you stay focused and you keep believing in yourself and you keep believing in your game. And if you don't do those things, well, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're freaking out that you're going to lose, and you're probably going to lose because you're freaking out. So you probably should not do that. And, the idea that you probably shouldn't hold on to it so tightly that you end up with this death grip and you just want to win. And it's like, well, sometimes it's just not about that at that point. It's about how well you can handle the cards that you have at the time. And for him, it wasn't looking good for a little while, but, he was able to ride it out and find good tennis.
Tennis, that and a lot of what you've talked about today has been, relying on yourself, finding that self-confidence, building up from the hard work that you yourself put in. Let's link that to the 5 years where you didn't have a coach and you were really dependent on yourself. Now, not everyone out there has the ability to afford a coach. And even if they do, sometimes they get too reliant on them. What are the greatest lessons you learned from being able to just kind of depend on yourself out there?
Well, I think a really important idea is that, you can have a great team around you, but they can't do anything for you. You have to be the driver of your ship, or whatever analogy you want. If you have, if you're running a marathon, you're running the marathon. Like, you can have people advising you and helping you, but you're the one doing it. You're the one that has to go through the physical suffering and the mental, struggles. And you have to be ready to embrace that regardless of whether or not you have a coach with you. And, sometimes early in my career, if I did have somebody helping me for a week here or a week there, sometimes it'd be a detriment because I thought things would maybe be easier when in fact they're not. It's just a different, your surroundings are a little bit different and you have more resources at your disposal. That doesn't mean it's going to be easier. It's the same difficulty level. And so, for having not having a coach for that long, is a challenge. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure if you've been playing this game long enough, or or anything really, you have an idea of what you can do to be better, and you have an idea of what are the things you're doing that probably aren't helping you. You could easily write down at least one thing each in those columns. Yep. And if you worked on those things day in, day out, they're going to get better. And if those things get better, you're going to be a better player. So that was kind of the mindset I had, was that regardless of who I was hitting with, whether it was a college player or a junior, not having a coach, and you're going out there, you got your 2 cans of balls and you're at a court and it's just you two out there and you're the pro, you're trying to get better. This is your job. Yep. And doing that day in, day out, it's like, okay, what are you going to do? It's like, well, I've got an idea of what are the things I need to improve on. And I have an idea of, I need to cut these things out because they're just a detriment to me. They're holding me back. And I'd go about that with as much intensity as I could muster, which varies because, you're human. Day in, day out, it's difficult. It's difficult to be your best self all the time. You're struggling just as everybody else struggles. And then I do the same thing in the gym, really. I mean, thinking about how I could be a, more of a physical beast on the court. What do I need to do? What do I need to go do? What kind of suffering do I need to put myself through to be ready to go suffer on the court, or not as much on the court because I had put the work in? And just being accountable to myself. Like, if I got in a good day's work, I felt good. And if I didn't, I felt like something was missing. I felt like I left something on the table, and I don't like that feeling. I've never liked that feeling. And sometimes it doesn't help sometimes because you do too much. You can overtrain, you can do too much, but people would tell me that. And so then I would take that into account. They'd be like, I'd be more likely to hear you probably need to take a few rest days rather than you need to be working harder. So when somebody on the outside would be like, hey, maybe take a day off here and there, it's like, okay, probably right. But that to me, that feeling of not doing enough always just left me with a bad taste in my mouth. And so I never wanted that. And so on the flip side, if I'd put in a hard day's work, that was the most satisfying thing I could do, really.
Well, you've given a lot of great lessons today, but I think that might be the number one lesson for anyone to really take away, which is holding yourself accountable. It kind of just doesn't really allow room for excuses. Right. And you're checking the checkbox. Did I get better today? What can I do to get better tomorrow? And if you do that, even in the smallest degree, you, God willing, will have a trajectory like yours.
Right. And you don't really know the one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten is, you don't know who you could be in 5 years' time. If you did all the little things right and you actually held yourself accountable, who could you be not in 2 weeks? That's too small of a time frame. Right. Who are you going to be in 5 years? Like, that to me is and you have no idea. That's the answer to that is you have absolutely no idea. You could be, incrementally better, which would be awesome. It's awesome to just be better at any level. Or you could be playing, you could be going from 600 in the world to having match points on Roger on quarters of Australia and being, the smallest margin away from being in the semis. It's like, it's pretty cool. And you could be more than that. Who knows? You have no idea. But like, you won't know until you do it. And you don't know until you devote yourself and you're willing to put yourself out there enough and say, hey, I did all I could. And potentially it could not be enough. You could lose doing everything you could do possible, just being okay with that. And that's something I see from guys a lot is they're just not willing to fully put themselves in that vulnerable position to say, I couldn't do anything more and I lost. And I'm okay. It hurts, but it's okay. People self-sabotage themselves, and I'm guilty of that as much as anybody. You self-sabotage because you don't want to be vulnerable like that. It's like, okay, well, I did this, or I was too negative today, so I never had a shot, or it's like, I never, gave myself a chance. Give yourself a chance.
Takes strength to be vulnerable.
Right.
Tennys, that is beautiful stuff. I want to open this up now because the bottom of our screen is just completely firing up with all sorts of questions throughout this whole hour. But before we get to them, I just want to call in a little special guest who's sent in a question for you.
Awesome.
Hey, Sang, how's it going, man? Hope you and your family are staying safe. I've got 3 questions for you. Number 1, what is something you do during your daily life that helps you improve? Number 2, what has been the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in your career? And number 3, what is something you would tell your 16-year-old self? Hope to see you soon, man.
Billy,
Billy Heiser coming in with some good questions.
Billy was basically the first kind of coach I had on tour. I had another guy, Theron Cole, travel with me some when I was a little bit more green. But Billy was kind of the first guy I hired for a little bit of time in end of 2013. I had hip surgery shortly later and was out for 6 months and then didn't have a coach till 2018. But Billy's a good dude. He's a good friend of mine. So what's something I do in my daily life to be better? I would say the most tangible thing I do is just go to the gym. Really, go to the gym and get work in, get physical work in. Because like I said with the 5-year thing, it's, you know, getting your physical base up isn't a 1 day or 1 week or one training block thing. It's a process that pays off over time, and you can only build up that base incrementally. You can only get better in these year spans. And so if you are putting in the day-to-day work, nothing crazy, but the day-to-day work, over time, you're going to be a physical beast, and that's only going to help you. What was it? Something detrimental to myself that I do to myself, or what? Something?
Yes, yeah. Something that if you could pick one.
I would say just being teaming up against myself on the court sometimes in matches, turning matches that are just me versus my opponent into myself and my opponent versus me, where I'm beating myself up too much, being too negative, not being my friend out there. And I'll still do that. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge because it's part of my nature. It's part of my nature to be negative and just cast myself in a negative way. So just be rid of that. Just replace negative thoughts with positive ones. And if you can't muster positive, at least don't tell yourself that you're not good or that you're not good on the day, or you're playing bad, or you suck, things like that. Just get rid of those things. Good piece of advice I've gotten is don't say anything out loud that makes you weak. Yeah. Like, don't put words to it. Don't put words to it. And if you are, stop and replace it with something positive. And something I tell my 16-year-old self is probably to relax, honestly. Just relax.
Simple as that.
Just relax. It's not simple, but like you can say that looking back, but when you're in it and you're young, and for those juniors out there, like time moves incrementally slower. Like 1 year feels like 10, for now, or 1 year then feels like 5 for me now. Like the last 5 years felt like it's gone by so quickly, but like the ages of 14 to 17 feel like they're forever, and everything feels like a big deal. And I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but like, you have to understand that you won't necessarily remember the triumphs that you had, or these matches that you win or lost, but you'll remember like the mindsets that you had, and how you treated yourself and how you treated other people, and what did you do day to day to be better, and what kind of lessons and what kind of habits did you try to instill, or what kind of negative things did you adopt that maybe you shouldn't have. And those kinds of things really matter. But the outcome stuff is what I mean when I say just relax. Like, don't worry so much about the outcome stuff. Do your best and be passionate and want to do well, but it's not this end all be all thing, whether you win or lose certain matches.
Billy, if you're watching, thank you very much for those questions. Those
Good questions,
gold.
Billy.
Sang, I'm gonna open it up to you now, so you can just take a look at the chat, and anyone that grabs your eye, have at it.
All right, let's go to the chat here. Let's go to the chat. All right, so how does this go? Okay, let's see here. From Nicholas, I'm 16, play high school tennis and some USDA tourneys. How important is weight training for tennis? I think some weight training is definitely important. Different people will give you different answers to that one. But I like to lift personally, but I know some guys like to do band stuff and core work and make sure that their cardio is really good. So it just depends on your body type, really, and depends on what you like, honestly. How are you different from kids when you were 12? Not too different, honestly, from Iris. Maybe more of a loner, but not too different. Who's among the three best matchup for you, Nadal, Djokovic, or Federer? I would say probably Roger. Definitely not Nadal. Definitely not Nadal on clay. But right now, I'd probably say Roger. Let's see. You have some hilarious monologues on court. Are you naturally funny? I would like to think that I'm naturally funny. but you know, it's important that you find your jokes funny, at least if nobody else does. Let's see, what is your favorite part of the game? I like the competitive aspect of it, really. I like the 1v1 nature of tennis. Favorite part of my game, I'd say my serve, but let's see. What sacrifices do you make to become a top player? All kinds of sacrifices, man. That's a huge aspect of being really good at anything, is what are you willing to give up? What things do you have in your life that are keeping you from being as good as you can be? And, you know, you make sacrifices to do anything, really, but because your time is you only have so much time. So you sacrifice one thing to do another thing. Or how good your technique is. Being calm is the most important thing when second serving at love 40. Not a question, but that is a good point, really, is how you deal with stress. Do you have a mental coach? I do not. I like to read a lot. You know, an aspect of psychology that's important is that you integrate the techniques and things yourself. It doesn't really help you if someone just tells them to you. You have to be able to integrate it into your own mental thought processes. So I try to take a personal approach to that. How often do you play tournaments as a junior player? Every weekend? No, I'd probably say maybe 2 events a month, I'd say was kind of the average. You don't want to overplay because you need to spend time practicing. And matches are a good supplement to make sure that the things that you're working on are actually coming through in matches. But, you know, you can definitely overplay, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to hurt yourself when you're young. Let's see. I don't know if I'm going up through the chat or if I'm going down into the past. I'm not sure. Honestly, I think I might be moving the wrong way. Okay. Yeah, I think I am. Yeah. Okay. How did you recover when Fognini came back against you in Aussie Open? Oh man, that was brutal. That was a brutal one. So I was up a set in 4-0 and he went up 5-4 in the second. And I basically told myself to calm down and stop sabotaging myself, which is exactly what I was doing. I got frustrated at something and held on to it for 5 games, which is a desperately long time. And when I was talking about windows of time that you don't want to give your opponent a good look at you, I gave a really good and dangerous opponent 5 games worth. And that wasn't smart, but it worked out, thankfully. But that was too much. Who are your favorite music artists? I like rock and metal personally. So like Metallica and Disturbed and Gojira, bands like that. How many hours did you practice per day? Somewhere between 3 and 4 when I was younger. A lot. Now I don't practice nearly as much now. Maybe 1.5 to 2 hours at the most. Don't want to hurt myself. Who's still your friend since juniors and he's an ATP Tour too? That's a good question. Not a lot of my friends from juniors are still on tour. Austin Krajicek is close. He's a really good friend of mine. And we didn't really know each other that much in juniors, but from college onwards. What was the change you made that propelled you from a low-ranked player to the top 60? I wouldn't say there was a change, just, you know, kind of mentally backing myself more and more. You know, momentum is a real thing, and staying healthy for longer periods of time was also a big deal. I was getting hurt at a rate that was really being detrimental to my ability to climb through the rankings. And so once I was able to stay healthy for more than a year, and that in a year turned into 2 years, I was really able to build on the momentum that I was accruing. What would be a recommendation for junior players who cannot exercise due to being in a country with coronavirus quarantine? That's tough, man. If your space is super limited, you can do push-ups, you can do core work, you can do wall sits, you can do lunges, you can do body weight squats, essentially, you know, prison workout type stuff. I'm recommending junior players to do prison workouts, which is odd, but you know, anything that you can do, you know, body weight, you can do shoulder bands. Shoulder bands are huge. Work on stretching. You don't want to overstretch, but work on your stretching. It's a big deal. Are you nervous in your matches? If so, how do you conquer your nerves? You know, you always get nerves, you know, before you step on the court. As you play, you loosen up, and it's just understanding, you know, as you mature more and more, the idea that the nerves just during matches just aren't going to help you, and to be free and to be as loose as you can, because, you know, it's not going to help you to be super tight. So if you have like a break point, you know, it's a big point. You are going to be a little bit nervous, but if you're, you know, allowing yourself to be more free and you just play your game and to play the game that got you there, you're more likely to succeed than if you get tight and you hold on to it too tightly and you play, you know, too passive. So just to relax, because it's your best hope. It's your best chance. How did that last volley feel against Fognini? That was really cool. That was special. Maybe one of the best feelings I've had on a tennis court. Do you recommend to the U.S. top 10 junior players to go to college if they want to turn pro? Man, there's no cookie cutter to that one. It all depends on where you're at physically. Do you have the funds and the backing to step into that world and to have somebody with you to help you? You know, what are your resources like? Are you mentally mature enough? Just, there's a bunch of things like that aren't necessarily just, are you a good enough tennis player? If you're top 10 in juniors, you're probably a good enough player. It's just, do you have the space around you to develop into the player you can be? Or if you turn pro, or do you need to go to college to have those extra resources?
Sang, everyone's coming in with unbelievable questions here. I haven't asked you, though, if there's something that you want to fire at the audience. Is there something you want to leave them with?
Do I want to leave them with? I
mean, really, it could be your brilliant strategic mind with regards to, you know, your League of Legends quality of play. I mean, that's a big thing. I don't know who out there plays League of Legends, but
don't feed early. Like farm the minion waves and don't feed. Okay, don't play team deathmatch late in the game either. Get the objectives.
Are you a better tennis player, or are you a better League of Legends?
I'm absolutely a better tennis player because I'm a shockingly bad League of Legends player. Okay. And I'm getting worse. The more time I spend into it, the worse I'm getting, which is not the right ratio. It's not the right proportion that you want. You know, you would hope the hours you put in equate to better play. That's not happening at all, which means that I'm not going to have a future in video games. It's just not going to happen, which is disappointing, but I'll get over it. I've had many disappointments. I've had some disappointments this year. I'll get over it, I think.
Well, listen, I have a sad feeling you're going to have enough time to be able to improve your game and practice on that. But I got to say, I'm a little bit upset that we got to do this, you know, virtually, as opposed to me getting to see you at all the events, which you're usually balling out at. But just on behalf of the audience, a huge thank you for really, you know, sharing so much as you did today.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I enjoyed it, man. I enjoy, you know, talking about this particular journey because it's mine, and it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one, and I feel like I've learned a lot about this game on the way, and you know, some things to think about and some things to maybe avoid. And you know, I enjoy talking with you. I have to ask though, where are you getting these delicious haircuts during this quarantine time? You know, what's happening here? What's happening here, Prakash?
Well, what is so funny is it was so bad. I mean, I look like buckwheat this morning. I mean, I was about to say Ote. I had this huge thing going on. I literally found whatever gel I could, just threw it all in there, pushed it all down. But I think in the next week, if you're interested, I think my fiance is going to try to cut my hair. I don't know how that's going to turn out.
Can you Instagram live at this haircut, please?
That's a great idea.
Please. Yes. First of all, I need content. And I think I just exposed how bored I am. So I'm going to tune into your haircut Instagram live.
That's bad.
I'm down.
That's bad.
I'm down.
If you tune it into that, that is bad. But but listen, let's do this more often. I know I learned a lot. I hope the audience did too. And once again, thank you for the time, my man.
Very welcome. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Prakash. Thanks to all the people in the chat and for watching. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
And just a reminder for all the audience members out there, our UTR powered by Oracle All Access series will be coming up again on Thursday, April 16th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. We'll have Dr. Jim Lohr and Gordon Euling on there. And when you get a chance, please head over to myutr.com to be able to learn more about how we can bring free technology to your tennis world, your community, high school, club, and academy. Once again, a huge, huge thank you. We'll see you guys all very soon.